Yo, what's going on, guys? Today, I'm gonna be doing a horror movie review for one of a classic slasher films that came out in 1992, and that is CandyMan. This film, I just watched it barely this week, like on Monday or Tuesday, and I've been planning on doing a review for like a couple of days now, but I haven't had time. And recently, I wouldn't say I got my phone completely taken away, but I kind of got it taken away. Um, I'm probably not gonna be able to post videos as often during the week, but on the weekends for sure I am gonna be able to. Um, so yeah, I've been trying to do a review for this movie, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it right now, and this I'm just basically just gonna talk about everything that that happened in this movie and how I feel about it overall and what I think about it. So yeah, before we get into it, if any of you guys are new, please like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. I'm gonna be dropping more horror movie reviews when I have the time, and yeah, that's basically what I'm gonna be doing. And I'm just gonna basically try to stay consistent with this, and yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this. Like, subscribe, like I said, and we're just gonna dive right into this. So, this movie, Candyman. How does this movie open up? Well, in the opening scene, we get introduced to this babysitter, Clara, and her this guy she's seeing, Billy. And Billy, by the way, is played by the actor Ted Raimi, who is also related to Sam Raimi. And Sam Raimi is the one who Sam Raimi he directed the Evil Dead movies, and he directed the Spider-Man movies, the old ones. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see a cameo from him here. And yeah, this opening scene is with them, and they end up doing the whole Candyman challenge, saying his name 5 times in the mirror. And they're like kind of like playing around about it, not really taking it serious. And then eventually Clara says his name for the last time in the mirror, and she ends up getting killed off. And we end up getting introduced to our main character here, Helen, which, by the way, she's a great final girl. And her and her friend are basically just in this college, and they're like, I don't know. I was like confused because they were like doing some studying. They were like in a study class about urban legends and like myths and folklore and stuff like that. So I was like, what kind of class is this? Like, I was just confused. And yeah, so Helen and her friend, I forgot, Barnetta, or I forgot how do you say her friend's name, but basically Helen and her friend were just talking about what happened here in the opening scene that I just described. And what's it called? They end up basically just talking about the urban legend of Candyman and everything that the all the stuff and the rumors going around about him. And you know they end up actually doing the Candyman challenge themselves, because they think it's just fake, and they end up just treating it like a joke, like they don't, they're like, yeah, whatever. So they end up saying his name 5 times in the mirror. And yeah, they end up doing it, and nothing happens at first. Like, it's just it's because, like, I feel like that's the interesting thing about this movie, is the fact that urban Candyman is treated pretty much like a urban legend, because that's what he is. And by the way, this movie takes place in Chicago, and it was filmed in Chicago as well. And basically Candyman is just an urban legend in their city, and they treat him like he's just fake. But every time someone does that, they're like Candyman sees it as like they're mocking him. So he ends up going after whoever says his name 5 times in the mirror, and they end up doing the challenge. They say his name, and then after that, nothing really happens. But Helen and her friend end up going on some you know journey adventure, going to a random abandoned apartment where they're like I guess they had to go there for their urban legend studies and for their class and try to get a thesis on what happened in that abandoned apartment where all the rumors about Candyman and whatnot were there. So yeah, they were like exploring. They were going on a whole adventure to go see what happened in this abandoned building where supposedly Candyman was like at, and they end up just exploring it. And there's like this they end up entering this like room where it's like it has like this like painting of like Candyman's face, and it has like his like just his mouth like wide open, and it's like just this big painting of him inside this abandoned apartment building. And they end up going inside of it, and they find like this jacket, and there's like candy all over the jacket, and there's like a razor blade in one of the candies. And they end up getting suspicious, and they end up just leaving. And there's this kid, by the way, that ends up telling Helen what the urban legend of Candyman was and what happened there, because apparently some kid ended up getting killed off. They show like a scene of it in the movie, like his body is like in a freaking toilet. I was like, what the hell? So yeah, there's like this kid. It's like his dead body's in the toilet, and I guess their parent ended up getting killed off in the apartment as well, because we see her dead body like not that long afterwards. So yeah, and then they basically, after they explore everything here in this abandoned apartment to get studies and take pictures and for their thesis, for their urban legend class, they end up just leaving. And we have this character here who is also Helen's friend, Annie, and she has a baby, Anthony, who apparently Candyman is related to, because apparently, if I could be wrong, but Candyman is the grandfather of this character right here, Annie. And what's it called? And because they also hinted at Helen being the reincarnation, I guess, of Candyman's lover that he had, his love interest, because in the film they end up explaining how basically Candyman, and in the story, some guy ends up explaining that Candyman in the 1800s, he was like a slave or whatever, and he ended up falling in love with who I guess Helen was at that time. Because like I said, apparently Helen is a reincarnation of Candyman's love interest. So she pretty much is Candyman's love interest from the 1800s in the story. And I guess because Helen did the Candyman challenge with saying his name 5 times, I feel like that's why Candyman ended up becoming more stronger and more real in her reality, because she did the challenge. And basically in the story they end up explaining how Candyman was a slave, and he ends up having a love interest. They have a kid, and the slave owners didn't like that, so they end up freaking sawing and cutting off Candyman's hand and replacing it with a hook, and they can get some beehive and drop it all over him, and he's getting stung to death by bees, and he has like honey all over his body, and yeah, it was kind of just gross when I saw it, and yeah, basically that's what happened to Candyman in the story, and at least that's what they explained, and basically, apparently, he's Candyman's the grandfather of this character Annie right here, and yeah, it's pretty interesting, and basically, Helen ends up encountering Candyman for the first time in this parking lot, and he's just standing there. And by the way, Tony Todd, who I just looked up like a couple days ago after I saw the movie, I looked up the actor. He's played by Tony Todd. Yeah, the actor Tony Todd who plays Candyman, brilliant actor. He like literally nailed this role, and yeah, I think he basically portrayed this character so well because he's I was kind of like just wondering how Candyman really is, and I thought he was just a straight up slasher, and you know this film, he it's more of like, it feels more of like a psychological type of horror film, and it's kind of like a it's more of like a suspense as well type. It like builds up suspense and tension and whatnot, and it's not really all about just brutal gory kills. I mean, there's a few kills, but if I'm being honest, most of the kills are off screen, and there's only a few kills where I'm like, oh shoot, like it's like shocking. But like, yeah, this film overall is like, it's not just a straight up slasher, and that's why I like it. And Candyman, he's just creepy every time he shows up on screen. I'm just like, he gives me this like freaky vibe. And like I said, Tony Todd played this role of Candyman very well, and yeah, and apparently Tony Todd is also in the Final Destination movies, which I've only ever seen the first one of the Final Destination movies. So I'm probably going to watch that whole franchise too and end up reviewing the Final Destination movies eventually, before the new one comes out. And yeah, and basically Helen ends up encountering Candyman in the parking lot here. And at this point, she's going crazy. Like she's wondering like if this is even real or not. Like if she's actually seeing him, and she's just questioning herself. And honestly, I kind of felt like that way so many times as well, because you guys know, like with the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, how like sometimes you get confused if certain characters are actually dreaming or not. That's kind of how I felt with this movie. I was like, is Helen actually seeing Candyman, or is she just going crazy? Is some of the stuff that's happening in this film actually happening, or is it just in her head? Or is like I was getting confused at times, like what is real, what is not? Because like I said, Candyman is just an urban legend. So technically he's not actually real, but he becomes real if you believe he's real. That's kind of the whole, message that this film was trying to say, and I found that interesting. And there's this another confusing scene where Helen ends up waking up on the bathroom floor, and she's like covered in blood, and I'm over here like, what, what the hell is going on? And her friend Annie is like over here going crazy because she thought Helen had killed her baby, Anthony, and it turns out Candyman just took the baby. But yeah, like Helen's just like over here like covered in blood, and she ends up trying, like, she doesn't actually stab her friend, but she just tells her to get off of her, to stop. And then the police come and they take her to jail. And they, at this point, everyone's just believing she's crazy. And by the way, her Helen's husband Trevor, like, I don't even know what was up with him, because like he was just like, I felt like he was a cheater, like, not gonna lie, because he was just like always flirting with like other girls in the film. So I think Helen's husband was a cheater, and he was never really that supportive of Helen. So yeah, I don't really care about her husband Trevor and what happens to him at the end, which we'll get to there. But yeah, she ends up just getting arrested by the police. She ends up going to jail, and eventually she ends up getting out of jail. But then eventually again, she ends up seeing Candyman in her apartment, and one of her friends barges in her apartment, seeing her like covered in blood, and she sees her friend Bernardo. Like, I forgot if that's actually how you say her name, but she ends up seeing Helen on the ground, just laying there covered in blood, and Candyman's just there. And yeah, she ends up seeing her Helen on the ground, and she's Candyman too. And what's it called? Candyman ends up basically killing her friend, and at that point, the freaking like the police end up getting called, and instead of her going to jail, like for real this time, she ends up going into some, institution. She ends up being locked up there, and yeah, she ends up just going there, and what's it called? Like, Candyman at this point was just like playing, playing with Helen's mind. He was just trying to, you know, I felt like at times he was almost trying to frame her. Well, he was, because this is another scene here too where she's like strapped up to to her bed in the institution place, and she's just like strapped up there, and she's like talking to, I guess, her therapist, and Candyman comes out of nowhere and he like stabs her therapist and kills him, and then you know he just flew away right afterwards, like just like nothing happened, and he just disappeared. So it was pretty obvious Candyman was just trying to frame her like so many times. Um, and like he was just like trying to make her look crazy. But yeah, basically he ends up killing her therapist. Helen ends up escaping the institution place because she knows that if they catch her with her therapist's dead body right there, they're obviously not going to believe her, and they're probably going to end up sending her to jail for real this time, and probably for a really long time. So she ends up just escaping and leaving, and she ends up going back to her house, seeing her husband there, and what's it called? Then afterwards, she ends up just leaving, and she goes back to that abandoned apartment that she was at in the beginning of the film that I showed you guys earlier. She ends up going back there, and she ends up encountering Candyman once again. And this freaking gross scene that I don't like, bro. Like, Candyman literally, he ends up like opening his trench coat, and he like opens his flesh as well, and like shows his like rib cage and his organs, and there's like I don't know, it was just so nasty the first time I saw it, and there's like bees coming out his mouth as well. I was like, bro, what the fuck, bro? What is this? And I guess it makes sense now why Candyman kept saying to Helen, "Be my love," because he it seems he likes bees so much, so it makes sense that he kept telling Helen, "Be my love." It all adds up, I guess, So, yeah, and then he had like bees all over his face. Like, yeah, it was like very gross. Like whenever I saw this movie for the first time, just seeing all the bees all over him in his mouth as well. Like what the. And then some of the bees end up going to Helen's face and in her mouth as well. And I'm just like, I honestly, I wanted to freaking turn off the movie when I saw that. Because it was just gross. I was like, this is just nasty as hell. But yeah, basically, and then after this, what's it called? Helen ends up going and escaping, and the next scene ends up leading with them. You know, they're like at a junkyard, this abandoned junkyard, and Candyman is trying to, he's trying to make Helen die with him because, like I said, they and there's like I forgot to mention because there was this another scene in this abandoned apartment building that they were at, that Helen was at here, and basically there's like this little painting of Helen as like her old past life or her past self, basically hinting again that Helen is basically Candyman's love interest from the 1800s. She's basically just a reincarnation of Candyman's love interest. So that's basically what they were hinting at from like the beginning, and they basically confirmed it with that. And that explains why Candyman kept trying to kill Helen, because he wanted her to die with him so that way they can be together forever, I guess, as spirits. And he basically because the also I forgot to mention as well, the freaking baby from earlier, Candyman, he basically just takes the baby and he ends up taking him to the junkyard that they were at the end of the film, and they're all just there in the fire because the town ends up just coming here and they end up burning the place. And Candyman's trying to basically suffer and kill the baby and Helen as well, so that way they can all reincarnate, or not reincarnate, but that way they can all be dead and live happily together in as ghosts or whatever. So yeah, Candyman was just trying to get them killed, and the town was like burning this junkyard place, and Helen ends up saving the baby. She ends up saving the baby and giving it to Annie, or not yeah, was it hold on, yeah, she ends up giving it to her friend Annie, the mom of the baby, and she saves it, but she ends up dying in the fire herself. And Candyman just, I mean, he was technically, he's already dead. He's like just this urban legend ghost. So, I mean, Candyman technically was already dead. But, what's it called? Yeah, he basically just, he disappeared, but Helen died. But she saved the baby though. And what's it called? Then, what happens next? I was like, bro, I was just so confused because basically, towards the end, they end up showing her husband, Helen's husband, Trevor. She ends up saying he ends up saying her name 5 times in the mirror, and then she appears as as the spirit. And I guess now, basically, Candyman, he got what he wanted. He basically wanted to kill Helen so that way they can be as spirits living together, and he got what he wanted because now him and Helen are basically dead. So, and Helen steals, I guess she takes Candyman's hook, and she gets Candyman's hook and basically kills her husband at the end of the film, her husband Trevor, and leaves his dead body inside of a bathtub. And I was just like, I was kind of shocked by that ending. I did not expect that. But so I guess Helen is the she went from final girl to basically the killer. She's now Candyman. She's Candyman or Candy Woman, I guess. So yeah, that's basically how the movie ends, and I was just like, man, this is a pretty crazy, bizarre film. So overall, I like this film though. I really enjoyed it, and this film, it was really good, and overall everything about it, I enjoyed it. And you know if I would have to rate it, I would probably give it a 9 out of 10. Just only because I thought the ending was just like, it was a little weird, but overall I enjoyed the film. And it's definitely a classic slasher film. Which honestly, I like I said, there wasn't that many kills, so I wouldn't even really consider this like a big old slasher film. It's more of, like I said, a psychological horror film, kind of like, it's that kind of horror film. But I heard that the sequels to Candyman are, those are actually your typical slasher films, because in the sequels they turned Candyman into a basic slasher. So I guess that's what ends up happening to Candyman in the second and third sequel or entries to the franchise. So I'm gonna end up watching Candyman 2 and 3 eventually, but yeah, I just wanted to give a review for the original. And I know there's like a legacy sequel that came out for Candyman as well. Which is recent. I'm gonna end up watching that too. So yeah, I'm basically just gonna catch up on this franchise. There's not that many films in it, so I don't really have to, you know, really, worry about it. But yeah, I'm gonna end up watching the sequels to this franchise. But overall, Candyman is a classic, and I just thought that this film was really, really, really good. Um, and like I just did not expect this film to be more of like a psychological horror film, and having it based off of urban legends as well. Like I was, because I just did not expect that to kind of be the theme of the film. Like, Candyman is just an urban legend. He's just a myth in this universe, and that's how he's seen as. It's just a urban legend. He's fake. He's not real, which is how a lot of us see, and in real life, urban legends. Like that's how a lot of us view urban legends and stuff like that. Like it's just fake. But in their universe, Candyman is just an urban legend, but he becomes real if you believe he's real. And basically he gets power, off of, the fear and, believing in him. And that's basically what keeps him alive. That's what, keeps him still going. And yeah, I just thought that was just an interesting aspect and angle that they hit on here. I just did not expect, for them to be commenting on urban legends and stuff like that in this film. And, because even it kind of reminds me of that there's another horror film that's actually called Urban Legends, which I'm sure some of you have seen before, but I've seen the original one, and that film also touches on urban legends. So yeah, and that film came out a couple years later after Candyman. So maybe urban legends took inspiration from Candyman. I don't know. But overall, I thought that this film, it was good. And eventually I'm gonna be, like I said, doing more horror movie reviews for other horror movies. I'm probably gonna do one tomorrow. I can't guarantee it because sometimes I get busy, so I don't know for sure. Yeah, yeah. Shit, my bad, guys. I don't know what happened, but yeah. So basically, I'm just gonna try to, do more horror movie reviews and try to keep track on that. But overall, Candyman, it was a good horror film, and I'm gonna watch the sequels eventually. But I'm gonna end up just doing more old school horror movie reviews, and also kind of do some new ones, here and there as well. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.